All right, it looks like our numbers have stabilized. So welcome, hello, greetings, everyone. Welcome to our Ready, Set, Go Wildfire Preparedness webinar. And welcome to Wildfire Preparedness Month. So across the country, May is celebrated as a good month to start getting everything ready for fire season and to start learning and taking action. And we welcome you to our first event this May. And I am Elizabeth Pickett. I'm co-executive director at Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. We also have Nani Barreto, our other co-executive director, and Devin Aruda on the line too, all from Hawaii Wildfire. And together we will be sharing some tips and tricks and best practices that you can use to prepare yourselves, your home, and your family from wildfire. So thank you ahead of time for spending this time with us so that we can dive in and learn some important things today. I'm going to start off with a little bit about our organization. We are a nonprofit organization that serves statewide across Hawaii and the Pacific. We've been around for more than 20 years. So we were founded in the year 2000. And we started off on Hawaii Island. We went statewide. Now we work across the Western Pacific as well. And over the years, we've become the region's primary hub of wildfire information, planning, risk reduction, fuels management, preparedness, and fire science communication. So we work in close partnership to do all those things with our fire and forestry agencies, our community partners, and lots of folks across the state and region in order to increase wildfire readiness and better prepare, and with the hope of leading to more wildfire resilience of our people and places. I'm going to start off with some key takeaways up front so that you know what we're headed for here. But really, we want you to leave here knowing at least these things: that Hawaii is a fire-prone state. We are on par with the other most fire-prone states in the US. 99% of our fires are human-caused. It's mostly by accident, and to us, that means there's a lot we can do to prevent them. We want to underline the fact that there's a role for everyone to play, and it really does keep all of us working ahead of time and collaboratively to keep our people and our landscapes safe from fire. We want people to really understand that firefighting is the last line of defense, but actually there's just so much we can do ahead of time, and we can do that individually and collectively. And there are lots of programs available to support your efforts toward wildfire preparedness, and we're going to cover some of those in today's presentation. So to start off our whole webinar here today, we do want to talk about what leads to wildfire in the first place. And whatever you see going on with wildfire in a place is a function of people, climate, and fuels. And this is a very foundational point so that we can really understand that wildfire is here to stay. It's a long-term problem in Hawaii, and that wildfires are increasing because we have these things increasing all concurrently. We have human-caused ignitions that are a result of our behaviors and lots of accidents. We have heavy rains that are then followed up by dry periods. So we have these green up events that grow a lot of vegetation, and then that vegetation dries out. And that is the kind of climate pattern that we live in and that we have in Hawaii. And we have non-native fire-prone vegetation that has invaded our landscapes, and we have highly combustible homes and towns. And all those things yield this recipe for increasing wildfire risk across Hawaii. Now, to better understand the parts and pieces of what's happening in fire, we wanted to show you how they all fit together and to create like a simple story to explain that. And basically, in our most simple form, Hawaii and many Pacific Islands are burning. It's because of human-caused ignitions. And where those sparks meet up with unmanaged vegetation, fire can spread quickly and damage natural resources and threaten and harm the built environment. And this is the part we're diving into today. It's to talk about all the risk reduction actions that we can take around our homes and our neighborhoods and with our families to give them a fair shot at resisting ignition that they might be exposed to. So we have a map on the next slide here that shows an effort of ours to collect and put together all the records from all the fire agencies over a 20-year span. And there are a few important things that we want to point out that even we were surprised at first, that now have become really instrumental in understanding what we need to do to move forward. So the first is that fires are being ignited on both windward and leeward sides, Malka and Mackay, on every single island in the state. So we're already having ignitions that require fire suppression response. Every red dot on the map required fire department to come and address a burning fire, wildfire. And we do have, in addition to the red dots, there are these little sea green areas. Those represent burn scars for some of the larger fires. But also we learned that wildfires, they're frequently on leeward sides because that's where there are large tracts of dry, unmanaged lands. But when we are experiencing drought conditions, anywhere can burn, and we're already having ignitions. We already have fuel on the ground. And so when the conditions are right, meaning dry and windy, wildfire is, our entire state is at risk of wildfire. It's not just the leeward areas. So moving on to the next slide, before we dive all the way into the Ready, Set, Go preparedness information, we just want to emphasize the idea that it does protect everyone. I mean, it does require everyone to protect our lands, our waters, and our people from wildfire. Firefighters do an amazing job putting out fires, but everyone needs to help to prevent accidental ignitions. We need to all be a part of managing vegetation and advocating for the management of vegetation. We need to be a part of making sure that building materials in our homes and that our yards and our and the surrounding homes can better resist and survive any fires that do come close. And then we all need to be evacuation ready just in case all those parts don't work out and it is time to evacuate. So the good news is that with a wildfire, there's just so much you can do. It's not like other hazards where you're just stuck with the hurricane or the flood or the tsunami. Fires can only travel where there's fuel, and we can manipulate what fuel there is to burn to reduce fire from happening in the first place and from spreading. So keep that in mind, that there's just so much we can do to be safer and be better protected. I think that's why you're here today. So thank you so much for attending to learn this information. And in this workshop, you're going to learn some detailed strategies on the proactive actions you can take. And they will all be based on the principles set forth in the Hawaii-specific version of the National Ready, Set, Go program. So from here, I'm going to hand it off to Nani, and we'll be going back and forth to present this content to you. But before we move forward, I did want to just note that because it's a webinar, the chat has been deactivated in terms of your ability to put things in there, but you can use the Q&A to ask questions, and we will do our best to answer the questions that you put forth. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Nani.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, everybody. Okay, so like Elizabeth said, we are going to walk you through some simple and easy steps that you can do ahead of time to really increase your house's survivability, which is the ready portion. To have a situational awareness when a fire does start, that's the set portion, and then tips to evacuate early, which is the go section. I do want you to know that, all of these recommendations that we're providing, they are recommendations that are rooted in principles based on real solid fire science research into how homes ignite. The data, the observations, they come from experiments and models using what's been learned in the past during some of our country's worst wildland fire disasters. We're not using any photos or examples from our recent fires. We opted out of that, but it is important for us to, show preparedness strategies for educational purposes in a sensitive manner. Our hope today really is for you to put into practice some of the tips and the recommendations that you learned today. And if you do this, it's going to make a difference. You are optimizing your chances for safety for your home, your yard, your friends, your family. So let's get started with the first section, which is being ready. You are going to notice this is the longest portion of today's presentation. So what does ready mean? It means three things. It means creating defensible space around your house, hardening your home, and making and practicing an evacuation plan. So first up will be defensible space. Okay, the primary goal here is all about fuels and reducing those fuels. So limiting the level of flammable vegetation and materials that surround your house. Again, we have to do this ahead of time, not when there's smoke in the air, not when you get the evacuation alert. Really, the best time to do it is all the time, all year long, and have it be part of your regular yard work, housekeeping. We as homeowners, we have to take the primary responsibility for wildfire safety around our houses, not anybody else. So defensible space means it's a prepared home. It means it's a defendable one. Firefighters, they're awesome at what they do. They're trained. They can safely and effectively suppress the wildland fires when needed, but there's never going to be enough resources to protect every home during those severe events. Even if it's just one home, they can't defend it if they have to spend time sweeping the decks, moving wood piles, patio furniture while trying to fight it. And they definitely don't want to, feel like their life is in danger protecting your home. So I want you to look at these two pictures and really think about the differences you might see. The one on the left, you can see survived a wildfire event, while the one on the right there did not. I know the pixel, it's sort of pixelated. You can't see it really clearly, but I'll walk you through it. So the picture on the left, right away, you can see all that green vegetation. The grass is actually, pretty short and hydrated. There's not a lot of dead vegetation. There's not debris piles. The trees back there, they're spaced far apart. They're located further away from the home. Even that driveway in the back there, there looks to be a pretty good clearance for a fire truck. And then that picture on the left, it is hard to see. You might not know immediately what you're looking at, but those gray areas are the remnants of 3 houses that were not able to be defended. They were not able to resist what probably started off as an ember storm. You'll notice all the vegetation around those remnants, overgrown, unmanaged, it looks. Probably, that continued closer to the home. And the home was probably maybe even unreachable or unsafe for firefighters. So throughout this presentation, we really can't stress enough that defensible space makes a difference. According to the fire science research, it's not necessarily where a home is located that determines the ignition risk. It's all that landscaping around it, the defensible space, which sometimes we refer to as home ignition zone. So with that said, I want to show you 3 ways that structures can ignite. It might be different than what you think. So first, direct contact with flames. Second, from embers. Sometimes we call them firebrands. And third, radiant heat, which is when air gets superheated from a fire source and then comes into contact with something that has lower heat tolerance. So in Hawaii, the primary way wildfires spread into our built environment is through embers and ember storms. Embers are those burning bits and pieces of vegetation and other debris. Our winds that can carry them really long distances, and then, sometimes even land at our back doorsteps. So we need our homes and our yards to resist those embers. We need to remove any chance that an ember can land somewhere on our property and then smolder and then ignite anything else that may be nearby that's combustible. Thinking about maybe those dry leaf piles that are in the rain gutter or under our lanai decks, even a dog bed that's sitting outside our back door. I have heard people say that the only houses that are at risk of structure ignition are the ones on the edge of a neighborhood or closer to a wildland area. And that's not true when we're talking about embers, and especially not true when we're talking about embers on a windy day. But the good news is, it's not all doom and gloom here, is that science tells us there's a lot that we can do on and around our house to increase the chances of our home surviving a wildfire event, like that picture that was on the left. So here we start with creating defensible space around your home. So defensible space is that buffer between a structure on your property and the surrounding vegetation. This buffer, it's critical. It's needed so that a fire that's crawling along the ground towards your home can either slow down or completely stop and really keep your house protected. Again, we refer to this as defensible space, or we refer to the defensible space as home ignition zones, and we'll refer to it as that throughout the rest of the presentation. But the concept there is that home materials and the immediate surroundings dictate its ignitability or survivability. So best practices here is to start closest to your home and then work your way out. That's where your mitigation actions are going to have the most bang for their buck, the most impact. Okay, so the home ignition zone, we break it up into 3 zones. The first zone is 0 to 5 feet. You can see on the red boundary there, and that includes the structure itself and the first 0 to 5 feet from the house. The next zone is the intermediate zone, which is 5 to 30 feet from the structure. And then the third one, which is the green line there, is 30 to 100 feet. So looking at this picture, it's, you're probably thinking, well, my house is closer, is next to somebody else's house that might be within that last zone. And that's not uncommon to have neighbors whose home ignition zones overlap one another's. And of course, that's going to require neighbors working together to address their shared risks. So just to mention, if you notice vegetation in your yard as part of someone else's home ignition zone, please, we recommend always being a good neighbor and mitigating that risk as soon as possible. This not only protects you from fires coming from their side, but it also protects them as well. So again, we've got these 3 zones. As you do your homework or yard work, think about them. Think about these zones, focus, again, your time and energy first within that first zone. The biggest bang is going to come from whatever you can do in that zone. And then after you've done that work, you can kind of continue working away from the house as your time and energy permits. So some practical tips for that first zone, 0 to 5, and Devin, you can change the screen. Okay, the main thing here is to remove all combustible or flammable materials in that first 0 to 5 foot zone, or to replace them with non-combustible materials. You can start by getting rid of all the dead and the dying debris from your structure. Look at your roofs, your gutters, the lanai, underneath the posts. And then do the same thing in the first 5 feet around the house. Look around and see if you see any dead or dying weeds, plants, shrubs, trees. Keep your lawn mowed short in that area. And then, keep doing this kind of work. Continue doing it throughout the season. Things are going to dry up. It's maintenance year round. And also, if you do have propane tanks nearby, try to create a buffer around that too. Other tips, not to use combustible materials like bark, wood chips, mulch, but instead use things like what we call hardscape, like gravel, pavers, and concrete. The plants within this zone really should be limited to those that grow low to the ground, those that don't have a lot of woody material. Keep things that can be properly watered and maintained. This kind of landscaping is sometimes considered xeriscaped because the plants need little to no water beyond, what the natural climate already provides. And that kind of makes it fire resistant. Limit combustible items like outdoor furniture and planters near the home. There have been fires, house fires that started because an ember landed on an outdoor combustible furniture that was left outdoors. Relocate lumber and combustible materials away from the house. And finally, replace combustible fencing, gates, and arbors that are attached to the home with more non-combustible alternatives. Things like fire-resistant vinyl, rocks, metal, that sort of thing. If you do have recycling containers or rubbish bins, within this zone, you might want to think about putting them somewhere else because those things can create nooks for ember gathering as well. We always like to say, anywhere wind blows leaves, it can blow embers. Okay, moving to the second zone, which is the intermediate zone, 5 to 30 feet away from the structure. We use the lean, clean, and green model for this one, just so that you can remember what type of landscaping is best in this zone. So for the lean portion, we're thinking, vegetation that's minimal, spaced apart, thinking about spaced apart both horizontally and vertically. And then clean is really having all the dead and dying vegetation and debris removed, cleared away. And green is making sure all the plants, they look green and healthy. They should be some type that can handle dry conditions, maybe need minimal watering. Be sure to remove branches that hang over the roof as well. Remove, prune flammable plants and shrubs, and then mow grasses to 4 inches, which is going to reduce the potential of, a fire spreading along the ground. On that note, don't forget, we don't want our mowers to be an ignition source. So, consider the day of the time of the day that you're mowing and the weather conditions. Don't mow during the hottest time or, on a super windy day, that sort of thing. And keep your equipment in good shape. We don't want any sparks. Ladder fuels. Ladder fuels are vegetation that can carry a fire that burns in a low growing area to a nearby taller area, vegetative area. So you want to make sure you're reducing the ladder fuels by trimming trees regularly, really to keep those branches a minimum of 10 feet from other trees. Also, replace any dry or fire-prone plants with more fire-resistant ones. We call these plants fire-wise plants. They're less likely to ignite from embers. And Elizabeth's putting a fire-wise native plant bookmark in the chat box if you want to download it. These are often the native plants because, our natives are already adapted to the climate. They're drought tolerant. They usually produce minimal leaf litter. And then the last practical tip for this zone is to make sure your home is accessible by the fire department. So that means driveways and roads need a clearance of at least 14 feet wide and 14 feet tall. You also want to make sure the address is visible so that the fire department can locate your house in the event of a fire. This idea of accessibility sometimes gets overlooked, so be sure to consider it when you're thinking through your preparedness plan. Okay, so that concludes the yard work portion. But let's go back to the 0 to 5 foot zone where the actual structure is located and talk about home hardening. So homes that are hardened are less likely to ignite, period. So home hardening includes non-flammable construction materials and resistant building designs. So let's start with a definition. Home hardening addresses the most vulnerable components of your house with building materials and installation techniques that increase resistance to heat, flames, and embers. And it's a very important aspect of your home survivability during a wildfire. So any openings or areas where combustible debris can accumulate or where embers can get into your home, that can result in a structural fire that starts from the inside out. On the right-hand side, you'll see a infographic that is actually the centerfold of our Ready, Set, Go handbook, which I believe you'll find in the chat box at some point, and you can download that handbook. But this page here, it walks you through every aspect of the housing materials and the installation procedures for how your house can be hardened and better protected. Next screen. Okay, so some home hardening tips are here. Roofs I actually don't see on the slide, but they are the most vulnerable surface because embers can land and then get lodged and then start a fire from there. So roofing material that's fire resistant and will help keep the flame from spreading is what you want to go for. Those are roof materials like composition shingle, Metal, clay, cement tile, all of those are good options. Gutters, they can serve as points of entry too, so consider installing gutter guards or screens. Embers can gather under open eaves and ignite exposed wood or other combustible materials, so you want to make sure that you close any open eaves with metal screens, or consider, boxed eaves from the start. Embers can enter attics or other concealed spaces. So, think about those vents. If there are none, put them on, or if there are vents that are less than 1/8 inch, replace them with the 1/8 inch metal screen mesh pieces. Fencing that's combustible can become, engulfed. And so if it's attached to the home siding, it can carry the fire right to the house, kind of like a wick. So separate the fence from the house with some sort of metal or other non-combustible barrier. And then dead or dry plants or combustible materials near windows can be ignited from embers. And that can generate heat that can break windows or even melt the frame. So remove any vegetation that's surrounding any windows. This is a diagram, and it shows parts of the house to think about when hardening. So the left side has building materials and installation techniques that are not ember resistant. And then the right side are the right choices, building materials and installation techniques that increase its survivability. So with eaves, again, we're going for the closed versus the open. For the siding, we're going more with fiber cement board versus wood shingles. For the windows, we're going for the dual pane tempered ones with screens versus single pane and no screens. For mulch, again, using rock instead of bark or wood chips or other combustible materials. And then the deck, you're thinking about the space, the spaces. Make sure that it's adequate spacing and not too far apart where embers can land and get underneath there. Okay, this is a video. Before you play it, Devin, I just want to let folks know. So this is a video of a house that's it's in a laboratory setting, and there's the left side of the house is hardened and has that 5-foot non-combustible buffer. And on the right side, or I might have it the opposite, I think the right side is the good side, and the left side has not been hardened and has debris within that first 5 foot. And this is in a lab, and they exposed this house to an ember storm. So go ahead and play it, Devin, and let's show what happens. The sound might be off, but there you can see the left side debris. It's already caught fire. Oh, there goes the whole side. Again, there's embers being blown from a ember chamber. And then the right side, you'll notice 5-foot buffer there, no vegetation, and hardened home, no ignitions. Okay. So yeah, home hardening, defensible space, it does make a difference. It will increase the odds of your house surviving a fire, and it's all based on sound fire science. So with that, we have a challenge for you. This is a challenge that you can take right now, this weekend, this summer, this month. We are holding a raffle to support it this month and next month, and everybody here on today's call is eligible to play. I think Elizabeth's going to put a link in the chat box, and in that link is a checklist of actions that we talked about today that will help you get prepared. So what we're asking is for you to go out and complete some of those actions, check it off on the survey, send us a picture of you doing the work, and then you'll be entered into our raffle where we will draw 5 names, and those winners will earn themselves a pretty cool HWMO Wildfire Preparedness t-shirt. Okay, the third piece of being ready, remember we're systematically taking you through the contents of the Ready, Set, Go handbook. Again, this is all in the handbook. That third part of being ready is about evacuation readiness. I'm going to hand it off to Elizabeth so you can have a break from me and she'll walk you through this section.
All right, thank you, Nani. So yes, our next piece of this is evacuation planning and readiness. And like we said, the Ready, Set, Go is the most intensive piece. So we're on the third and final portion of Ready. So evacuation planning and readiness, it includes writing out your plan and updating it yearly. You also want to practice the plan. This means grabbing a go bag, leaving the house, practicing your evacuations well in advance of a fire event so that you can see how it unfolds, where your decision points are, where you might need to modify your plan. And it does force you to have your go bag and some of those other things ready ahead of time or all year long. So we really encourage that you do that evacuation preparedness and planning way ahead of time, and that you involve your whole family. You make sure everyone's aware of what's going to happen in case of a wildfire event. You'll hear me say over and over again that we do want you to make it and practice it ahead of time. That's super important because the time to figure things out is not when you're scared and needing to get out of the way. So you'll hear also over and over again that you don't have to wait to be told to evacuate. So we'll get to that in the go portion, but the idea here is to be ready to evacuate as soon as possible and to be able to do that ahead of time and leave as early as possible. So to help you, or to help those who may not have an evacuation plan in place yet, there is a template inside of the Hawaii version of the Ready, Set, Go preparedness guide. You can use it. We've whittled it down to be real simple and easy, so that you actually have it on paper. You can rip it out, put it on the fridge, whatever makes sense, but keep it somewhere handy, accessible, and somewhere where you'll see it all the time. So it's just already kind of in your knowledge bank. The idea here is you've done the planning, you've done the practicing, and you'll remember the details when it comes time to actually evacuate. So when it comes to practicing, we also want to encourage you to include any vulnerable neighbors in your planning and in your pre-incident communication, in your practicing. Or maybe you might need to help them with their plan, especially if they're going to need extra time or assistance. So you can scoop them up into your own planning and have them be part of your family's evacuation readiness, or you can just make sure they're okay and that they've done theirs. We just know that not everyone has the capacity to evacuate on their own or to prepare what they need to ahead of time. So we just want to make sure that the people around you in your neighborhood also have that extra help. For instance, kupuna, folks who don't have transportation, folks who might be mobility challenged, etc. And then one more thing is, as you're planning all this out, remember your pets and make sure that you have a plan to get them out safely too. Your cat carriers are somewhere easily accessible, etc. And then there's this section that talks about the supplies you'll want to have on hand. Now, with other disasters, there's a recommendation to have a certain number of days of food supply and all this sort of stuff. But with wildfire, it's really what do you need that are your essentials to get out quickly? And so we want you to know about what that is. The American Red Cross has a go bag list of things. And then just remember that for fire, you want it to be simple, condensed, readily available, small bag, essentials, get out. And so we want you to take a look at how to assemble your go bag. It's pretty simple, and it's different than being ready to stay for weeks and weeks without water, etc. So with that, that's a wrap for the ready portion of the Ready, Set, Go, but we do want to move on to set and go. So ready is all that stuff you can do any old time of year. Ideally, it's ready to go by the time you hit May, which is why May is Wildfire Preparedness Month. It's the time to make sure you have your feet under you, everything's ready to go. So take action now on all those things that we just went through. But we do also really want to talk about set. And what set is paying attention. And in the lingo for emergency management, it's called situational awareness. And it's really a lot of what we're going to talk about is how can you make sure you have awareness of what's going on. And so being set means paying attention to what's happening around you. It means paying attention to all those indicators that let you know when you are at risk. And that happens over two different time scales, because you'll need to pay attention in two ways. The first one is seasonally, or throughout the year. So you can watch the condition and the color of the vegetation to know if we're entering into dry season, if fire risk is higher, etc. And you can notice, we've all seen this, the grass goes from green to yellow to brown to gray. As those colors are changing on the landscape, fire risk is increasing because things are drier, fires will travel more quickly through that vegetation, etc. So let that alert you to the increasing fire hazard, and let it hustle you into making sure all those parts we just went through for ready are taken care of. Your house, your yard, good maintenance and yard work, your family's prepared, you have your evacuation go bag and you're ready, you know where you're going to go. And so that is all the preparedness stuff as you're watching seasonally, but there's another kind of way that we are asking you to be paying attention closely, vigilantly, and being set. And that is being aware when there's a fire during an event anywhere near you. Fire is nearby or in your general vicinity. During a fire, and throughout the day, the winds change directions. So don't assume that because there's a fire or the smoke looks like it's super far away, you know, it's way in the distance, there's no way it would come or change. Don't make that assumption. Pay attention to it. Sometimes that could be the case, but sometimes the fire behavior changes really quickly, and what was blowing away from your neighborhood might start to blow toward it. So that's where that vigilance, stay alert, stay aware, pay attention. If you start to smell more smoke, if you see it getting closer, just have eyes on it, or have, you know, go outside and pay attention to what it feels like, and pay attention to your intuition as well. Fires just change direction really quickly, so we want you to be tracking it the whole way through, and through your own senses and through your own phone trees, but also through formal emergency notifications, which will help you and your family to be prepared. So that this all goes back to remembering that fires don't just happen through direct flame contact. They also things can be ignited from superheated air, and also embers floating in the wind that can travel miles and land, you know, and land wherever they do. But if it lands on something combustible, it can ignite that. And that includes all the things Nani talked about: leaf litter in your roof gutters, green waste piles, all those things in the nooks and crannies on the gables or your rain gutters of your home. So for that reason, you know, fires that are occurring sort of close by, maybe within a mile or two away, that's still a threat that we want you to be paying attention to. So you don't have to live in constant fear or panic. If you're way up on a ridgeline and 20 miles away on the other side of the island, you're seeing smoke, that's not the kind of fear we want to, you know, stoke. But if it's getting kind of close, or if it's, you know, somewhere nearby and the wind is, you know, typically going in that direction, definitely let that alert you to start really paying close attention, and just be tracking what's going on. So if it's getting close, we get into the go scenario, and that's our last section. So the idea is, are you ready to go? That comes up with it. That starts with the preparedness, the go bad, the evacuation planning, even your yard work. The time to start sweeping your leaves and trimming your trees and packing your go bag and figuring out where you're going to go is not when you need to evacuate. It needs to already been done long before. And when it comes time to go, we want you to plan to leave early and grab your stuff, go according to plan, call the people you need as you planned, etc. So when you're planning and writing your evacuation, you want to have several routes planned out. You want to think about how you're going to navigate closed roads or traffic. Any neighborhoods, if they have one way in and out, what's an alternative way? Can you walk out through the golf course? You just want to be thinking about that, thinking about safety zones, think about your routes ahead of time. And then when it comes time to go, you've done the thinking, now you just execute. And if you have to modify and make decisions, you've pre-thought those things out. And so we also want you to know that, you know, of course, civil defense or emergency management will set up shelters when that is needed. But it's a good idea to have some other ideas in mind too. You know, you're going to go to Tutu's house that lives, you know, 10 miles out of the way, etc. You can always go and come back. You can go and have dinner and come back if it's nothing, but we really want you to get out early and not necessarily wait for an evacuation. So definitely have, an evacuation notice. So definitely have a few options in mind of places you could go for temporary or for overnight, and have that kind of thought out and arranged before the last minute. And then also when we talk about paying attention to evacuation orders, we want you to make sure that you follow any directives that are given by those coordinating the safest exits, the shelter plans, etc. We strongly encourage you to sign up for your county's emergency management or civil defense alerts and notifications. Those are the agencies that actually coordinate and issue the directives and information based on fire department, police, and other recommendations about what's going on at the incident. Those are very difficult decisions to make. And sometimes by the time they're confident and they're willing to take the risk of all the things that happen during an evacuation, because people get scared, you have additional traffic accidents and medical issues that come when people are really scared. By the time they've made that directive, you need to follow it and you need to do exactly what they say. There's a link in the chat box that you can use to sign up today for your emergency management notifications. But we also want you to use your intuition and also rely on the reliable information to know what's going on. But that said, we really want to emphasize the early part. So there just isn't enough personnel to come knocking on every single door, every single time, with enough time to help you figure out what to do next. That's on all of us to be ready ahead of time, and then to just leave if there's a chance, because we want to keep the roads open. So to end our go portion of the Ready, Set, Go program, we have a video here of a driver that documented their escape. Might have been too late, and it was from an Ember storm in 2016 that took place in Canada. Again, we're not using Hawaii videos. We want to be sensitive, but we do want to note a few things before we watch the video. So notice the traffic, notice the smoke. Keep in mind that even while cars are moving slowly, people's minds and hearts, they're racing, they're scared. Like I said, it can lead to medical incidents and accidents on top of traffic that further puts everyone in harm's way. So it goes back to that idea that, it's a complex decision by our agencies to decide on a mandatory evacuation, but you can make the decision for yourself to get out early and not be a part of that congestion and traffic. And also, if you're helping keep the roadways open, it leaves it open for emergency managers and responders to come in and deal with the incident itself. So go ahead and watch this video. And just remember that it's better to leave early and not be stuck in this kind of evacuation traffic. So I'll let you watch it for a second. But notice the smoke. Notice the way people are driving two at a time. You can see in this scenario, but sometimes it's so smoky you can't see. Sometimes you can feel heat. You don't want to be in that scenario where you're actually having to drive through fire and smoke and where it's hot. You want to be out way ahead of time. So ideally, you've been paying attention all season long. Risk was coming, the dry season was coming. You've been paying attention all day long, knowing that there was a fire nearby. You've been using your situational awareness. You've been tracking the fire. You've been paying attention, and you've used your own judgment to leave early, way before anyone even told you to do that. You're not staying late to start to do your preparedness, but rather you're using that time to get out of the way, open up the roadways, leave them open for your neighbors and those who couldn't get out, leave them open for emergency responders. You have your place to go that you've arranged ahead of time. And you can do that with the peace of knowing that you and your family and home and yard are as prepared as possible to resist ignition, to survive the fire. You can just not be worried about those things, because those are things that are part of your lifestyle, but rather you can just worry about the evacuation and getting out early. So the point with all of this is have everything ready so that you can just go, leave early. If I could underline one thing for this entire webinar, I would say leave early, well in advance of even being told to do so. So with that concludes the Ready, Set, Go portions of our Ready, Set, Go program. It will it will coincide exactly with what you'll find in the Ready, Set, Go action guide. We're going to put that into the chat so that you can directly connect to it. And for any of these links that we give you, we are updating our website. So if over the next day or two you see that it's not available, save those links because they will be soon. We're getting a whole remodel on our website to make things easier for you. Now with that, I do want to summarize what we've talked about today. So we are challenging you to take action around these Ready, Set, Go principles and what you learned today or you learned in the guide. So that is having your yard ready with defensible space, having your home hardened with non-combustible building materials, having your family prepared well in advance of a fire with your evacuation plan completed and practiced. You've included neighbors who may need it. You've included your pets as well. And then you are staying set by staying alert throughout the year, staying really tuned in to any nearby incidents, getting your notifications, and finally you are ready to go, leaving as early as possible if there is a nearby wildfire. So if you follow this package of recommendations, you will really have the maximum peace and comfort that you can have, knowing that you've done all you could. And that it's actually very empowering because there is so much you can do. You don't just have to get stuck unprepared with all those things in place that make fire worse. You actually can have a lot to say about the outcome being much safer and improved for all. So the comprehensive Hawaii-specific Ready, Set, Go preparedness guide, it's available digitally on our website. Paper copies are also available if you want to request them in bulk. If you have an opportunity to distribute them more widely, we welcome that within your neighborhoods or your social networks or clubs or schools or churches, etc. And we've posted a bunch in the chat box. So you can also go to hawaiiwildfire.org website. It will be new and improved in the next bunch of days in case it's not functional when you happen to look at it. So with that, I think I can pass it off to Nani and she's going to wrap us up here.
Okay, some additional resources before you leave. The Ready, Set, Go handbook is our primary, but it's not the only resource we have for learning about wildfire preparedness. We have our Firewise Communities program. I know a lot of you on the call today are residents of Firewise communities, but that's a program that supports nationally recognized neighborhoods across the state that are taking action at their local levels to address wildfire safety. People being part of that program, it's also a great way to meet neighbors, to get organized, take action, and really build that resilience into your neighborhoods. Secondly, Wildfire Community Preparedness Month. Today is the start of that. The first Saturday of every May is National Community Wildfire Preparedness Day, but we celebrate it the entire month of May in Hawaii. And we've got dozens of neighborhoods across the state that are doing community mitigation projects this month. If you are part of a Firewise community, we encourage you to get out and participate in whatever happenings are going on in your neighborhood. Lastly, the Wildfire and Drought Lookout is our statewide all-partner awareness and preparedness campaign that gets launched during the dry season every year. Really, the goal of this campaign is to bring awareness, information to all of you using the same messaging across all agencies. We host the campaign's website on our website, and we'll put that in the chat as well for you. You can find the Ready, Set, Go handbook there. You can sign up for emergency alerts, lots of different outreach and information resources for you. And again, the website is, like Elizabeth said, it's being revamped, but it will be available soon. We encourage you to follow us on social media. You can subscribe to our newsletters so that you can stay up to date on the latest and greatest happenings, resources, tools, workshops, that sort of thing. I think this is the final screen. Really, I want to thank each of you for being part of what has become an annual event. We are so grateful to each of you for really this partnership with us. So many of you have reached out, in the past 8 months, looking for ways to join the cause, to get prepared, to do it right. And we're so honored to support all of you in your efforts. So please let this be the beginning of our partnership and our conversations. I know that we don't have the chat box enabled, but do know that we'll look at any questions that are in the Q&A. And if you have specific questions, please reach out to us. Our email address is admin@hawaiiwildfire.org. And this officially concludes our webinar. And thank you again, and we'll continue to stay connected. Ahui ho.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Wildfire Preparedness Month.